Okay, and we are live. Hello, everybody. I hope everyone has had a lovely week. Today we are jumping back in with our Space Walls. This is the guy we finished off at the end of last stream. Today we are going to be highlighting him and shading him and doing his base. Which, speaking of which, means we are also going to be finishing off this guy's base today. This is the guy who, on the base, we put Ard coat. That's why it looks nice and shiny. I'm going to paint this outer rim blue when I'm done. But we're going to be adding some snow to this base today as well. Mohawk Man, yes. And we're also going to be finishing off our wolf boy, because right now he's a dire wolf without any features. So he just needs some... He needs a little nose, he needs a little snoot. But we're going to start with our boy here. And we're going to begin by shading. Which one do I want to start with? I'm going to go in with Drakenhoth Nightshade, or Drakenhoth Nightshade, which is that nice blue shade that I used on my last guy's armour. I'm going to go in with that first. How's everybody's day going so far then? Are they having a good day? It's been like a week since obviously I used this blue and I forgot how much I like it already. It's just nice to use something that isn't just black all the time, because I always go in with Nuln Oil when it comes to doing the shading. So although Nuln Oil is included in this, it's nice to have something that isn't just Nuln Oil and complements the Space Walls quite well. The day is awesome, can't wait for work. Oh dear. Oh dear. That night shift life. Only got one more week and then I'm off on maternity leave, which means we're off to officially start consistently streaming. At least until he comes. But it means that the streams will be a lot more frequent. Just had a little bit of pooling there of my shade paint, so I'm just getting rid of that to control it whilst it's still wet. Picking up some more paint. I just think this makes his armour just look a lot more... Immediately makes it look grittier, which is the look I'm going for. Obviously when I'm using a shade, adding a little bit of highlight, a little bit of darkness where it needs to be. But it also just makes it immediately look a little bit more worn and gritty. Oh, accidentally put some on his face. Sorry, buddy. You don't need a blue face. So aside from work, has anybody else got any plans for this evening? The way I'm going in, like if I've ever put too much of a shade paint on, to kind of clean it up, I'm dipping my brush in some water, dabbing it off on some kitchen roll, and then just letting the product soak, like it gets sucked back up into the paintbrush bristles. That way then I'm controlling the pooling whilst it's still wet, because it's the same with shade paints and contour paints, contrast paints. You have a limited time to move them. The minute they are dry, you cannot remove any pooling that's happened. So if you have a little bit on your brush and control where you place it, you'll get the right effect that you're after. But if you do get any pooling in incorrect places, just use kitchen roll and a bit of water to help suck it back up. Now I need to paint his behind. My apologies, sir. So obviously we know that, is it Darkwater that comes out for pre-order tomorrow? We are going to attempt to order it online. Whether or not we'll manage to get our hands on it, we don't know. Is anybody else going to be attempting to try and get their hands on it tomorrow? There we go. More on his chest armor, and move on to our next shade. There we go. I think next we'll move on to his ginger hair. And to highlight that, I've got a couple options. I've got 3 options technically. I either have Gorgrant of Fur, which I might reserve actually for the furs on his backpack. Reichland Flesh Shade, and Seraphim Sepia, or Sepia. I think this one, I'll go with this one for now, and if it's not quite the shade I'm looking for, I'll go in with Reichland, I think, because it's got a slight reddish hue, and since his hair is ginger, that would actually work quite well. But we want to kind of keep it more on the neutral tone, the neutral side. So we'll start with a more muted brown. I think the ginger mohawk on this guy was a very good idea. I like his ginger mohawk. Yeah, I think that was the right colour selection. And now right click onto Flesh Shade to go over his hands and his face. And then I use some Nuln Oil on his mine. Almost couldn't think of the word then. Get between those fingers to show off the creases in his knuckles. Once these are all dry, I'll be going in with highlights to obviously add coolness and obviously highlight back into the face and the features. But for now, we just let that dry first. Now we're going in with tried and true Nuln Oil over his mine. I'm off to work. All the best with the stream and Mr. Mohawk. Okay, Mr. Nerd. Hopefully the rest of your shift goes okay. I'm also going to apply this to the brown sections and to his grenades that he's got on his chest. So just through here. Just muted myself temporarily there. My next door neighbour is still drilling and doing DIY and home renovation. So whenever I can hear loud noises, I'm just muting it temporarily. Right. That's him shaded. So whilst he dries, we're going to go in with our first boy. I'm going to start adding the snow effect to him. For the snow, we are using Technical Paint Valhallan Blizzard. Which for consistency, as you can see, doesn't look like a paint because it's not. It's technical paint and when this dries on the figure, it will look like snow. I'm going to take a little lump like I've just done here and spread it out around the base. This is one of my favourite technical paints, because again I just love doing snow scenes. He's stood on a rock on this side, so I'm building up the technical paint around that rock. And then a little bit around his other boot. And then I'm going to do a couple of random little spots. And that'll be the snow done for this figure. But I'm doing the same base on all of them, so it won't be the last snow base I do today. There we go. I have a couple drinks in front of me as well as my water dish, and I keep almost overreaching and then almost dunking my paintbrush in my tea. That would be a very bad idea. That's how he looks. So that's our figure from the last video, all finished now, except for painting the rim of his base. But yeah, he's pretty cool. Pretty happy with him. We'll take him off and we'll swap him back out for Mohawk guy. And we will start mixing the colours for his edge highlights. As you can kind of see, I've got a little pile of paints here. It's quite a large pet collection actually. Going in with rust grey, and I'm going to mix that with some white scar to get the colour I want. A little drink break first. There we go. After nearly 3 weeks as well, so I don't sound like I'm sick anymore, so that's a good start. So we are gradually getting better. That is nice to hear. And then white scar to mix with that rust grey. Going in with one of my very, very small bristle brushes to do my edge highlights. And what I'm doing is quite literally just taking it along the edges, as the name would suggest. Just small controlled lines. Just doing a few stripes at the top here because this is like a bit of a covering over his backpack. So where the fabric's rippled, I'm going in and just adding those back in. We are almost officially in the time of year now where we can start doing stuff for Christmas. Well, it's more deemed acceptable to do stuff for Christmas. If you're in retail, I'm sure, like me, it's been Christmas since like September. Has anybody got any Warhammer gifts or anything like that that they are hoping for Christmas this year? Apologies for any clanging in the background, my cat is deciding to cause mischief. Just turned the volume down on our desktop audio a little bit. Hopefully that's a little bit better. There we are, some very nice little edge highlights. Just doing around his collar there. So far I'm really enjoying painting the Space Wolves. Not that I didn't think I would, I do like the Space Wolves quite a lot for painting. But it's nice to be able to paint more than just one. think I'll go in with my silver highlights next. For that, I'm going to use... Where are you hiding? There. Can't really tell with this lighting, but that is Stormhost Silver. I'm going to add a little bit of this onto my wet palette now. Apologies, neighbours moving furniture by the sound of it, which is quite loud. Right, picking up a little bit of that Stormhost Silver. Just going to start bringing out edges in certain sections of this mine. This is something I will build, this is a paint I'll build up in layers, just because I think when you're doing silver on silver, it doesn't really tend to show up that well. You kind of need to either base it in white first and then go in with the silver over the top, or just do what I'm going to do and go in with a couple different layers just to make it a bit more visible. It'll be visible in photos, but I want it to be a little bit more visible for stream as well. Trying to find where all the silver elements are, as I have quite a few on this figure. Just picking out the pins on the grenades on his chest here. And then part of the handle of his gun, you can just see just in here. Just picking out the ends on his wire here. And then the edge of his axe. And the bottom of his axe. Again, just some more noise and gonna have a little tea break. Right, time to mix up our yellow now. For that, I'm going to mix Avalanche Sunset with some White Scar. But first, I'm going to just go over and make sure the yellow is still clean. Because I can see there's a couple different sections where when I added the shade paint, it went onto the yellow. And I could easily just go over this with the highlight, but just to keep it clean as well, I'd rather do it this way. He's a very cool figure. Okay, whilst that yellow dries, I'm going to go back in with the silver now because that layer's dry. And just add that second coat I was talking about just to kind of make it look a little bit more vivid. Not massively, but it just helps bring it out a little bit more. Obviously when Darkwater comes out, we're going to have a lot of figures to build and a lot of figures to paint. So long as we can get our hands on a copy, then we will be doing that. Are there any releases coming out that anybody else is particularly excited about? And we're always constantly trying out new music and new songs. And some of the songs I play are okay, and then others I'm like, what in the world is playing? Just having a look at our little pupper as well, a little direwolf from last stream. He's very, very sweet. I mean, he's a deadly dog, but you know, he's sweet. I'm very happy with his colour scheme. Quite simplistic. I think if I do any more walls or get any more walls from Space Walls in the future, I'll be doing them in that colour scheme or trying that. Okay, moving on to our browns, because that yellow is still damp. I'm going to go in with some Gortha brown for the highlight on his backpack and on his belt and on his satchel. I'm more or less using the exact same size brush for all of these, which is just that very, very thin, tiny brush. Like so small you can't even really see it on the camera. But it's perfect for doing edge highlights and highlights in general, because you have obviously this more bulbous part of the brush, so it's more comfortable on my fingers, but then I also have a lot of control when I'm applying product, which makes it a lot easier. Going to focus this on the top parts of his satchel, the little pockets. And then for his gun holster, I'm focusing that more along the edge to do a quote-unquote edge highlight. I'm just thinking also what colour I should go for his highlight for his hair now as well. I think his highlight should be quite vibrant. Just kind of add a little bit of a colour difference there. But for now, we'll go back to our yellow. Ooh. So again, that's Avalanche Sunset and White Scar for those two. And then I might mix in a tiny, tiny drop of Phalanx Yellow. In fact, I will, I think. Just a tiny bit, I don't need too much of that. And White Scar. Not the Phalanx Yellow. You could go with the Phalanx Yellow on its own, but because this is a slightly more orangey toned yellow, almost, I think going in with the Avalanche mixed in as well just makes it a little bit more subtle of a highlight. If you didn't want subtle, obviously don't go for mixing in Avalanche. Right, I almost want to make like a milky yellow colour. And then I'm going back in with some phalanx just to brighten that up again. Again, with all your paints, you want to dilute them in water or with some kind of paint medium. Dealer's choice really when it comes to what type of medium you want to use. Okay, I think I've finally mixed a colour up that I'm happy with. Which, I'll just pick up a piece of paper, it's easier. Is this one down here. And again, picking up a very small amount on just like the tip of my brush. And hunting out the edges. That I want to highlight. Which in this case is at the top and bottom section of this cuff. Because obviously, like I said at the very beginning, I'm going to be having a bunch of time off very, very soon. Obviously, it won't be entirely available. I will be raising a newborn. But during that year that I'm off, I will be streaming a lot. So if any particular content that you guys want to see more of, let me know, because then we can obviously plan for those kinds of streams. If you want to see like obviously exclusive content, then we can do some more exclusives, like stuff you can only pick up in the store. Or any sets that come out if we're able to get our hands on them, if you want to see what they look like. Can even do like little unboxing videos where if it's a brand new set, we open it for the first time on stream with you guys. Mr. Nerd can then start building stuff. And I can always then paint whatever we find. If that's the type of stuff you guys want to see. But if you guys want to just strictly stick to stuff like this where I'm painting, or where we are playing Warcry, or and when we finally get the hold of it, Kill Team, then we can do that too. I think to be honest, like as new starts, sometimes it's good to have the content there. If you're brand new and you're new to it all, to kind of have somebody you can watch who's also new or relatively new to learn alongside, and to be like, okay, we're in the same boat here, I'm clueless as well, let's figure this out so we can all enjoy this new hobby together, which is really fun. I'm going to mix now a little bit of the Fang with some white to do the highlights on his gloves and on a few more of his pieces of armour. I absolutely love this colour. It's a perfect bluey purple colour. I know there's a name for that, but I don't know if it's like periwinkle blue or something like that, where it's like a bluish purple. But it's nice. I like it. Obviously our stream started a tiny bit earlier than we normally would today. Because even though we're streaming a little bit longer, I've got some content to do for tomorrow's video. And also because I wanted to make sure it was all set up and they never had any problems. It was easier for Mr. Nerd to be able to help me sort them out, really, more than anything. But we didn't have anything. We've got no technical issues this week. Fingers crossed it stays that way, knock on wood. But yeah, pretty happy with how it's going so far. Right. Got that slight light colour now. And I'm just gonna bring it over edges. I'm really liking how he's looking so far. This edge highlight look very, very good. Next highlight is going to be his skin, which since he has a mohawk, there's a bit more skin on show in comparison to our other figure. So for that I'm going to mix Bugman's Glow with Kislev Flesh, but I'm going to use more Kislev Flesh than Bugman's Glow. Just because this is a slightly more pale tan colour. And I might mix even a tiny, tiny bit of white in with that as well, some white scar, just to further tone it down, because both of these colours are still on the warmer side. Obviously I want his skin to be a little bit warm, but not so warm that he looks sunburnt like he does right now. Right now, this Space Wolf has been spending a little bit too much time in the sun, without wearing any sun protection. It's not a good idea. But Bugman's Glow and Kislev Flesh have kind of become my go-to now for any skin tones, like especially if you're like a white complexion like I am. I mean, I'm very white, but nobody needs to be as pale as me, so we give him a little bit of colour. Now, I'm going to pick out some details on his fingers first. Kind of just going in between where his knuckles are. And blending the paint downwards. Now for this big old forehead. Sorry sir, but you do have a little bit of a 5 head because of the mohawk. So I'm just gonna further emphasize that by kind of adding some brightness to your features like your nose and your forehead, pulling that up and around your mohawk. And then on his cheekbones. I will say, these guys have got great cheekbones. Great bone structure in general. Just to help blend that in a little bit more, I'm going to mix a tiny bit of Bunwin's Glow just on the edges. Just to create a smoother transition so there's no harshness really. There we go. Now we're going to apply a little bit more of that skin tone onto his chin. He's got quite a prominent chin down here. So, just a smidgen on his chin as well. And his knuckles are kind of hidden, the ones that are holding the mine. So I'm just going to highlight them underneath there. Not that there'll be much of a highlight there anyway, naturally. It would normally obviously be pretty hidden there. But just for the sake of this, I will add a highlight. I'm just going to add a tiny bit of shading to the yellow sections as well whilst I'm here. I'm going to go in with Seraphim Sepia for this one. And I'm going to also add this 20 gold pieces that he's got, because I forgot to do that before. Not that it matters too much, this is just to kind of make them look a little bit less flat. Because the rest of this is looking a little bit livelier. All these little knee pieces and joints. There we go. That's better. Okay, I think next is to go on to his base, really, because there's not really a lot more I can do to this guy. So, for that, I want to go in with 3 main colours. They're going to be Lothern Blue, Ahriman Blue, which is a slightly darker blue, and then Blue Horror. The tip with doing any kind of snow or ice base, like I said, I did this on the last stream, I'll do it again today, is you want to blend these things together whilst they are still wet. Because you want them to bleed into each other to create that kind of swirly look. So, beginning with our darkest shade, we're going to go darkest to lightest. So, I'm also using like a slightly more, a brush I don't really care about as much for this. Just because I can be a little bit more rough with this and I don't really have to be so careful. And then I'm just gonna deposit that colour. Obviously, because it's watered down, so it's obviously quite thin, but it's not watered down enough that it's kind of bleeding off or kind of not doing as I tell it to do. Like, you still need to have control of the product. Normally, you would just leave that as is. You would leave it to dry and then you'd go in with another layer on top. Not for this. You want this to be applied as quick as possible. So we're going in with Lothern Blue now. Because this brush is already quite wet and I've just rinsed it off in some water, I'm only going to add a tiny bit more water to this one. And I'm just going to, because it's going to be blending in with water, a wet paint, sorry. I don't really have to be so sparing with water for the next few paints. And I'm just kind of using a dabbing motion to bleed them together. And there's no particular placement, it's just going on the base. Okay, so we can see it kind of slightly there. It's just a very subtle shift in dimension. Obviously, if you wanted to do a realistic ice scene, you wouldn't do blue, you would do like a greys and whites. But this isn't supposed to be a realistic look. This is supposed to be a imaginative, a bit more cartoony almost, I guess. Ice. And now I'm going in with blue horror and doing the exact same thing. The perk about doing this technique as well that I really like is, even though I'm doing the exact same base on all of these figures, they're all going to look different. Every single one of them is going to look different. So that's quite a nice thing. There we go, that's his base. I'm going to leave that to one side to dry. I'm going to move back onto our Wolfie boy. Obviously, he's not going to fit on my mount, so it's going to be a lot of me holding him. But this is, I think we tried to name him Grimnir before. So we're going to go in and start adding some features to this pooch to make him look a little bit more like a doggo. Going in first with Thondia Brown. I'm going to use this to do his nose, because I could easily do like a little black nose, but I just think it would almost look a little bit too harsh because he's a majority brown direwolf. So going in with that really small brush again. Like, this guy will need some shading still. So that's the plan for today, is to kind of, for this guy, is to, well, finish him off. Because he won't take a lot more work, to be honest. He's not a very complex figure. Very cute figure. But not a very complex one. He's got all these creases and folds and stuff like that within his fur and ripples. So that will be brought out when I go with the shade, which I will do in a moment. But for now, the next stage is to do his teeth, which they aren't going to be completely white. So I'm going to actually mix a tiny bit of Kislev flesh with some white for this, but use more white than Kislev flesh, just to kind of make like an off-white colour. That's Kislev. And then white scar. You can use Corax white or any other white you have, but I just happen to have a little bit of Kislev flesh out and a little bit of white scar at the moment, so this works for me. Okay. He hasn't really got any gums on show. If he had gums on show, I'd go in and add pink. But he doesn't really have any. So, instead I'm going to focus on his teeth. Super, super simple. I'm going to drag that over his claws as well. I will be adding a tiny bit of red to these claws though. Just because, end of the day, this guy is a big tough wolf boy, so he needs to kind of show he's been to battle a little bit, at least. Even if he is the king of belly rubs. He still needs to have some proof that he's seen some battle. Okay. Pop him to one side and move on to our next figure. Which is either one of these boys. Do I want to do Dreadlocks boy first? Or another Mohawk boy? I think I'll do Dreadlocks boy first. Because I've just done a Mohawk. So we'll do Dreadlocks. So we'll set him up on his stand. And he is ready to be painted. It's a pretty cool looking figure. Don't know what he's pointing at. But he's pointing at something. He's got the big backpack. With all the stuff. So we'll paint him now. So first I'm going to mix in my same colours I use for everything, which is rust grey and, where are you hiding? Thunderhawk blue. I'm going to mix these two together to make the colour for his armour. Very stark contrast comparison to all of our other figures who've obviously all been done in colour so far. There's something having something so light. It's a little bit weird. But that is fine. Gonna go in with throwing the caps of my paintbrushes everywhere. Not ideal. Probably this size brush, just slightly bigger, but not quite as big as my biggest one. A little bit of water on my brush. It is time to paint. I'm either going to absolutely adore this blue by the time I'm done with it, or I'm going to absolutely despise it by the time I finish painting these guys. to grab our last figure, because there's 6 of these in total. Make sure they're all put together. Has anybody got any plans for their weekend? Unfortunately, I live in the world of retail, so my weekend is consisting of working. But not for much longer. Like I said, I've only got 1 more week of this. And then I'm on maternity leave. And I've got just shy of 4 weeks where it's just more or less going to be constant streaming just to fill the time. Unless the little nurgling decides to come early. We will see. That has like a little keychain, a little tail keychain on him. Make up some more of that colour. To be honest, Thunderhawk Blue is one of those ones where you could go in with just that on your own and then use Rust Grey as your highlight. But I quite like the combo of the Thunderhawk and the Rust mixed together. And then using Rust Grey and some white, I just can highlight it that way. It's also a preference. Still trying to decide which sections I want to do in yellow. I'm thinking I might do almost his entire arm with his gun in yellow. Just to switch it up. This guy's got quite a full beard as well as his dreadlocks to do. So he's going to have quite a lot of facial hair for me to do this time, so that's a bit more interesting. So far the guys before have had a tiny little goatee and then been clean shaven. So we get to experiment with some facial hair soon. Today's stream will be like 2-3 hours long. So we're trying to get as much as we physically can into this today as possible. Because over the next week we're going to kind of be actually looking into the actual set itself and doing one of our little reviews, determining whether or not we think it's like a full value or good value for money, which already I can say it is. I think in total, just for the armies, you're saving something like £30-40. Obviously this is UK money. But you're still saving a small fortune by getting these. It's actually our first time buying any Tau. So that's Mr. Nerd happy, since he is a dirty space communist supporter. He does love Tau. So this was an opportunity for him to fall in love with it all over again. Just getting that blue in between and underneath these armor pieces. I'll use a small brush for that, I think, actually. Just because I want it to be more accurate. He looks like he knows what he's doing. Like if this guy was bossing me around, I'd probably go do what he says. He looks like he'd know what's going on. Just using that smaller brush to get around his neck and the back of his armor now as well. I'm really throwing my paints everywhere. Luckily the lid was closed, so it's okay though. Otherwise, would have had quite the mess to clean up. There we go. So Got a little bit of blue to do underneath his jump pack. There we go. Avalanche Sunset. You know the drill by this point. This is the yellow I'm going for. More or less every single time I have done a Space Wolf on this channel, I've used Avalanche Sunset as my yellow. I enjoy it quite a lot. I think it's a really lovely colour. Just making sure I'm not picking up too much because I don't need that much for what I'm needing it for. Mixed with a little bit of water. Okay, now moving on to his shoulder panel. He's got some very cool armour though. Very cool armour, very cool weapons. He's got a very good sword here. There we go. It's going to require a couple of coats to do all the yellow, just to make sure it is as pigmented as I want it to be. But I'd rather do a couple coats and make sure it's as pigmented as I want it to be, then slap the colour on and make it look chunky. Yeah, that's his majority yellow arm. Has anybody got any plans for Christmas then? Any gifts that they have planned, Warhammer related or hobby related? this cloth that's going over him, I will use the blue again. But the rest of this pack I'm going to paint yellow. Having them on these stands is definitely a lot easier, because it's easy to control the figure. So if you have like someone who's new to the hobby and you haven't bought them one of these yet, looking for a gift, I'd recommend getting them a little stand for their minis. You get ones where it's like massive stands as well. You can more or less stack up an entire army, and they're normally quite good for stuff like if you're spraying a bunch of them, or if you're painting them all in the exact same colour scheme. You can kind of list them up on that, or line them up on that, sorry. There we go. Mix up some more of that blue mixture now, so I can do the fabric over his bag, and then I'll go in with Tuscal fur, which is this orangey brown colour, to do the furs that he's got, and then we'll move on to his other things that he has. Just looking up the colour scheme that people have actually recommended for the little dire wolf, and what we've done is actually not too far off what they've got. Anything I might do for him is add a little bit of Tuscal fur just over the top of his hackles, right along the top and down the end of his tail, before I add any highlight to that. Has anybody else managed to get their hands on the Dead Silence kit yet? And if they have they managed to play it yet? Or are they still in the it's too pretty to take out the box stage? Or like me and Mr. Nerd, where we're still in the painting stage? Because I'm going for quite a traditional colour scheme for our Space Wolves, whereas he is not going for a traditional colour scheme with his Tau. Hasn't decided entirely what he's going to do with the colour scheme yet. He started doing something, wasn't too keen on it, and now it's back to the drawing board for him. But there's no worry there. Right, I'm going to go back in with a second coat of yellow now, just to kind of make sure that's built up properly. And it's as pigmented as I want it to be. And then whilst that dries, I'm going to go back onto my dire wolf and do his shading before I do anything else on this guy. I think I'll do one of his knee pads in this as well, actually. Go for this one. One of his knee armor pieces. That one will require 2 coats, because I already painted that with blue. There's no worries there, because that will look fine. And that's him so far. Pretty cool. Mr. Wolfie Boy. This is a bit of Tuscal fur, which is beautiful orange-red colour. He has got a few furs on him, the guy I just put to one side, the guy we were just working on, but not very many. So I'm going to get this out. Then I'll do his furs as well as this guy, the wolf. And then I'll jump back onto the wolf and do his shading. I think the only other animals I've done for anything Warhammer related so far have been a bird and a horse. So it's quite nice to do something that isn't a bird or a horse. And these walls are pretty cool. Just grabbing a brush that I can stipple with. And then all I'm doing is blotting that off on a piece of tissue paper. Not tissue paper, kitchen roll. And then down the centre of his back and along the spikes. His heckles. And just dragging that down right down the centre. In fact, because that's not super wet, I'm just going to go in and start using my shade paint, which for that I'm going to use Gorgrunter fur. Most fixings are at the top portion. It's got all these beautiful layers of fur that I really want to make sure that we bring those out because it just looks really, really cool. And if anything, this colour kind of makes it look like it's got more of a russet brown kind of hue to it. Obviously, just like with our other figures, we will be highlighting this guy. And for that, I'll be using a collection of like browns and whites. Literally underneath as well and dragging it down his feet. The only place I'm not really applying this too heavily is his face. Just because I do want to go in with some Nuln oil there rather than brown. Just because I don't really want to lose too much of the brightness around his face. Just making sure he's all covered now underneath as well. You can still see, even with that shade on, that the lower half of him is lighter than the rest of him. And when I go into add highlights, we'll kind of bring out the lightness in that again. So it won't be entirely lost. Okay. Go back to our guy now, so I can do his furs on his outfit. Again, for those furs, we are going to be going in with Tuscal fur. And I'm just trying to make sure I'm using my smallest brush. Because unlike the others where it's like quite a prevalent amount of furs, there isn't that many on this guy. I also just realised his blue on his backpack could do with a little bit of a top up. So we're just gonna fill that in as well. Okay. Now for those furs. Just very subtle. And this little like keychain thing. Not entirely sure what this is. I think it's just a charm. There we are. Now to move on to our silver. For our silver, we're going in with lead belcher. And this is majority going to be his gun. And a few other little pieces. Don't need the smallest brush for this one because it's not like I'm going to get too close to anything. If I didn't have lead belcher, I don't really know what I would do. The amount of projects I've done that involve this paint. Obviously I'd have to find an alternative, but it's just because it's just the perfect silver. Nice big silver gun. A little bit more just to finish off that. And for a few other little metallic elements he's got going on. And then I need to get some retributor armour out, because on his... In fact, I might do that one in silver for a change. He's got a little wolf head on his shoulder. Of course, for any other metallic elements, I'm going to use a smaller brush. Here's some armour, not armour, ammo on his chest. So trying to put this little satchel is on his back here. Still figuring that out. We're trying to. For his sword, I'm going to do the top and the bottom part in lead belcher, and I'm going to do the middle part in Stormhost silver, just to mix it up a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to go in with some Stormhost silver again. And that's going to be the entire middle section of his blade. This one's going to need like a few coats, just to kind of make it really show up. But Stormhost silver is still a very nice colour. Which does this one again? He has a few like little charms. I'm tempted to use one of the other technical paints to fill those in, because we've got some technical paints that we can use that make it look like it's make things that turn into stones, like actual gems. Well, I'm tempted to use one of those for this one. The question is what colour? Because I have blue, I have red, and I have green. I think I might do red. Yeah, I'm going to go in with Spirit Stone Red to do that. Consistency-wise, this is a very gooey paint in comparison to some of the others. Probably not a good technical term, but it's gooey. It is a gooey texture. It's a very thin texture, but that is the point. You essentially layer it over stuff like layer it over metallics, and it makes them kind of transition into gems. Which is just like a nice little extra touch. It's got one right in the middle of the chest here as well. So 2 coats of that. I'm going to go back in with that Avaland on his kneecap now, because that's 100% dry. Like I said, it would need a second coat, 100%. That's that one. I'm going to go back in with some more of the Thunderhawk and Rust Grey mixture. Just to touch a couple of patches on his foot down here as well. Yeah, this has been pretty cool. For this wolf on his shoulder, I'm using Lead Belcher. Like this pack does come with decals, but I haven't used those, the transfers. I haven't used those before. I will be attempting to use them, but I don't know which ones I'll use them on. Maybe one of the other guys, because the other figures don't have anything on their shoulders. So I think I'll attempt it on one of those. Because the other ones that I've done have all got kind of something going on their shoulders, whether that's lots and lots of furs or it's these little built-in sigils. I don't want to obviously add anything extra to those because they're already quite a lot on their own. Going in with some Thondia Brown now. And that same small brush I was just using, but I'm going to just count some using a bigger brush first. And I'm going to use that to do any of his satchels. Which this guy's got quite a few. Satchels, belts, stuff like that. And then onto his skin tone, which for that I might use a combination of Thondia Brown or even Gortha Brown mixed with some Bugmans, I think. In fact, no, I'll do his skin tone first. So I'm going to do Gortha mixed with some Bugmans for his skin. So main base of this is going to be Bugmans, to still keep it flesh toned. To kind of still keep the skin having like a slight pink undertone. But this mixture just kind of creates a nice, beautiful, like pinky brown tone. And then this means I can go back in with Bugmans later as the highlight. That's his face done. This is base coat of his face. Obviously later on we'll add highlights. I think for his hair we're just going to have to go in with a dark... I want to make this like a dark grey, I think, rather than straight black. I think I'll start with a base of Abaddon Black. And then I'll go in with grey later. So this is going to look a little bit ridiculous first because it's just straight black that I'm applying. When I add highlights later, I will add something a lot lighter. And I'll probably even put some browns through it as well, to make the mohawk a combination of like black, brown and grey strands. This guy's got a little bit of facial hair as well, so I'll need to go in with this same mix and do his facial hair as well. I think he has facial hair. Oh no, this one does not have facial hair. The others have facial hair. Never mind. There we go. Just like on the first guy, on his head, he's got like a little hat / helmet thing. So that's the reason why there's a big white gap between his skin and his hair. But I'm going to leave both his skin and his hair to dry first before I touch that. Just to make sure I don't risk smudging or blending the colours into each other. Whilst that dries, we'll do his satchel using that brown I mixed. This feels like getting me excited. Like I keep saying I'm going to do one thing and then going, oh no, hang on, I should do this instead. And in that moment when that idea popped into my head, I'm like, I need to do this now. Whilst I remember. So I apologise if this one is a little bit sporadic. But everything will be painted, I promise. I think tonight we'll do the base of this guy. We'll do the highlights on the wolf. So the wolf is finished, and do his base, at least his blue. And then we'll do the ard coat, technical paint ard coat on the very first figure we started off with, Mr. Ginger Mohawk guy. And then we'll call it at that for tonight. So it's probably still at least another hour of content. Easily. I feel like this guy's like the mum of the group. Because he's got all these satchels and all these like pouches. He's the mum friend who's like, I need this. And he just pulls it out of his bag randomly. And you're like, oh. He's the organised one. He's the one you need. In a world full of chaos. If you guys have a friend like that. In my case, I am that friend. Looking good. Okay. What's this paint? This giant rock he's stood on. Don't know. But let's get some Retributor armor on there as well first. So I was just having a little snack whilst I was stood up for a second. The Retributor armor. Here's a belt buckle that needs a little bit of that. I'm kind of tempted to paint his headgear with this, because he did silver for his little sigil on his shoulder, his decal on his shoulder. Normally I do that in gold. And then normally his headgear in silver. So I thought I'd switch it up today. So we'll do a little bit of cleaning up over here as well whilst we're at it. Okay. So yes, Retributor armor next. Which is for his belt buckle. Because unlike some of the others where like their midriff has been really quite hidden by their weapon, he's very open. So I want to make sure that that is seen. And now his head armor. I think that looks cool. There we go. Okay, I think it's just rock, wolf, and Ardcoat, and that is it. So for the rock, I'm going to go in with... I'm going to mix like Abaddon Black with a little bit of White Scar, just to get the colour I want. The other colour I would have used would be Eshin Grey. That's normally quite good for rocks. But the majority of this rock is going to be covered up by snow. So I'm not too fussed with the colour overall. Just because I know I'm going to be almost hiding a lot of it underneath that snow, or like snowy, icy landscape that I'm going to be doing on the next stream. There we go. And now we're back to Wolfie Boy. Now for this, I'm going to need that dry brushing technique again. So this isn't necessarily a dry brush that I'm using, this is a battered paintbrush. But because the bristles are now a little bit stiffer, it actually makes it a better dry brush. But you can use a proper dry brush. If you have one, I advise you use that. But instead of doing like edge highlighting or like picking out individual hairs, which I can do, I'm gonna just dry brush this white over the lower section of the wolf. And then I'll mix the white with some other colours. In fact, no, I'll pick out individual ones actually. And then I can do a mixture of whites and light browns. Now this one is going to be like quite a tedious job, I think. Might be too, it's actually quite satisfying to the individual hairs on this guy. I'm going to do all the white first, and then after that I will mix a light brown. I'll go in with light brown. And then after that I will go in with the tusk gore fur. And just build it up like that, I think. And then of course his tail. And his heckles. He needs a few little highlights through his heckles. A few more around his face. There we go. And now I'm going to go in with Tuscal Fur, I think. Let's go straight in with Tuscal Fur next. And no, I'll go with Warther Brown. Magic Warther Brown is this lovely lighter brown shade. I'll be concentrating more of this onto like the top section. And then a few sporadically throughout the bottom section. Because this is like a slightly cooler tone brown to the shade paint we put on as well. On camera, they might not show up that well, but in person, like when I do the photos, you'll see them a little bit more. And then what I'm doing with that Warther Brown to make them stand out a bit more on some of these white highlights, just some of them, I'm going over them with that brown, just because it will make them appear lighter. Right. Tuscal Fur time. Like this is, like I said, a really pinky, orangey toned brown. So these highlights are going to stand out a lot more. I'm tempted to even add some, when I do the snow on this guy, tempted to add some little flecks of snow through his fur. I think I'm going to actually cover up majority of these white highlights. Just because on camera they're not looking the greatest. But you can still see it's added a nice bit of dimension by adding that white underneath. It's actually further brightened a lot of the paints that I've used. Looking pretty good, I think. Just got a couple tufts of fur on his face that I'm just gonna drag this through. And then next is Nuln oil over his face. This will make his face look a little bit more grey toned. But he's got some pretty handsome features, so we want to be able to see those. It just highlights his features a little bit more. Well, that's Wolfie Boy. Which means it's on to our final step for the night, which is to use Ard Coat. We just use Ard Coat on our base, just to make it a little bit more, well, to make it look like ice. You will have seen me do this on the last stream, but in case you weren't here for that, it is as simple as with technical paints, you don't really necessarily want to dilute them. So in this case, you just want to take it from the pot and smear it around on the base. As thick as you like, the thicker you kind of put this paint on, the better it's going to look in regards to the final product. Because if you want like an icy texture, then you kind of want it to be quite thick. And that is it. That's that all done. So like I said, we're going to end the stream there for tonight, guys. Thank you so much, everybody who tuned in for what to watch and what I will be doing over the next couple of days. Because we're going to be streaming again on Monday 100% and maybe even Sunday night. We'll finish off the last two figures. We will do the base on the wolf and we will go from there. And then hopefully next week we'll be ready to do like a little review of the set and see if it's good value for money. So I'll leave you with that for tonight. Thank you everybody who's tuned in. I wish you all the best. And I will see you guys on Monday, if not Sunday. So have a lovely night, everybody. And I will see you then. Bye, guys.